Thank you, DJ Yao. Now, classical music lovers enjoyed a night with Australian pianist Daniel Herscovitch, who held a performance recently in Jakarta. Now, it marked the opening of Ananda Sukarlan Award International Piano Competition 2016. Now, we have the master here in the studio, Daniel Herscovitch. Good morning, Daniel. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
How are you feeling? Are you feeling the vibe from the DJs?
Yes,
you know,
don't ask me about Pokemon.
That's out from your usual scene of classical music, right? And DayBreak is always bringing you special things. You know.
Good,
no, so how long have you been here already?
This time I've been in Indonesia just over 2 weeks.
2 weeks,
yes.
and you were here for the Ananda Sukarlan International Awards,
yes,
right?
That's right.
Which was already held?
Yes, it finished yesterday.
How was it?
The standard was very high, I'd have to say. The judges were very impressed. It was.
And you were one of the judges there as well.
That's right. Yes.
So can you explain to us a bit more about the award?
This award has been held 5 times. This time it's an award that's held every 2 years, and it was founded by the composer Ananda Sukarlan, and it's a way of encouraging young pianists to develop their musicality and their pianistic skills. And I believe it's regarded very highly within the country.
Is the response good? Do you have a lot of young talents, upcoming rising talents?
I've been coming to Indonesia now for 5 years and teaching and performing, and I must say I've been very impressed by some of the playing that I've heard from Indonesia's young people. There's some amazing talents here.
Wow, okay, now perhaps you can explain to us or share with us about how did you get yourself into learning classical music or piano?
Oh, I've started when I was 5. Apparently, I used to. In those days, we had the 78 records, and
those are the 78 records on top of piano, or
no, they're before vinyl recordings. I had the 78. This is going back to the 50s.
Oh, the 50s. Okay.
And I used to play them, and then I'd play what I heard. I would play on the piano.
So it's autodidact.
I started it autodidact, and then my parents thought, oh, he better have some lessons. So that's how it all started.
And how did you? Have you ever thought that you would want to be a famous pianist one day?
I don't know about famous, but from the age of about 13 or 14, I decided that I wanted to spend my life being a pianist.
Playing piano. And you are currently right now,
I teach at the University of Sydney.
And you teach piano, and you teach classical music. Now, how many types of types of genre would you say in piano? Like there's classical, there's also jazz.
Oh, there's classical, there's jazz, there's pop, and within pop there's a whole lot of different
ones.
But even within classical, there are different streams. There are pianists who only play romantic music, which I don't think is very healthy, but there are. And there are pianists who specialise in Baroque music, and I personally prefer to try and play a little bit of everything from
So you can play everything?
Well, not everything, but bits. I try and play from all kinds of classical styles.
But what would you say you're most passionate about, though?
That's a very difficult question. When I play contemporary music, I'm passionate about contemporary music, like the Ananda Sukarlan piece that we're hearing just now in the background. And when I'm playing Bach, I'm passionate about Bach. So whatever I'm playing at the moment, that's what I'm most passionate about.
Now, you held a mini concert last week in Jakarta, and how was the response?
It was very good. I played music by various composers, including Australian composers and Indonesian composers, as well as, what else did I play? A Danish composer and Beethoven and Schubert. So I like those kind of mixed programs, and the response was very positive.
Varieties of them, Wow. Are there a lot of younger kids right now aiming or reaching towards becoming a pianist in Indonesia?
So. Yes, I think there are. Of course, young kids, they see just, the lights and the glory, and then when they become teenagers, they realise that it's a lot of hard work, and some of them change their minds.
Is it a lot of hard work playing the piano?
Well, you just have to, you you've got to practice every day and you've got to maintain your standards.
If you don't have a passion for piano, but let's say your parents, make you go for piano lessons. Now, would it be different from someone who actually has passion in piano in terms of playing it, in terms of going for the exams?
Oh yeah, that's different. I mean, I think it's right for parents to encourage children to learn the piano, even if they're not particularly passionate about it. It doesn't mean that they're going to be pianists later on, but just as part of the general education, music is very important for children. And later on, they'll actually be grateful. But a parent shouldn't force the child to want to become a professional, because that's a very different thing. The motivation has to come from within yourself.
Now, did you get a lot of support when you wanted to be a pianist?
Yes,
from family,
I think I did.
From friends?
Yes, my family were very supportive and my teachers were very supportive. I did get support.
All right. Now, apart from Jakarta, you actually visit a few other cities in Indonesia.
Yeah, so far I haven't seen as much of Indonesia as I would like to, but I go every year to Surabaya, and I went last year to Yogyakarta also. I think I'm the only Australian who's never been to Bali. So I hope to get there one day, and I'd like to see the other islands.
How are the classical music scene there in Yogyakarta and in Surabaya? Is it the same as in Jakarta?
I think in Surabaya the classical music scene is huge.
It's bigger,
and there's some very talented students there as well. And Yogyakarta, well, of course, you have ISI there, Institute Sen in Indonesia, and I heard some very talented students there as well.
What impressed you the most when you visit Indonesia?
Oh, in general, well, I love the people, I love the food, I like the batik shirts.
The batik, yes, you're wearing batik right now, right? You don't find it anywhere else, only in Indonesia.
And batik shirts, that's the most comfortable to wear in a concert.
Yes, that's
much better than Western dress.
No, but in terms of the music scene, what impressed you the most? What is different with Indonesia and other countries that you've been to?
Well, what's surprising is that Indonesia doesn't have a long history of interest in classical music. And what's surprising to me is how knowledgeable people here are. For instance, on my very first visit to Indonesia, I was amazed that people knew so much about Australian classical composers. And I'd have to say I knew almost nothing about Indonesian classical composers. So I have tried for that reason to play Indonesian music now. And I also play Indonesian music in Australia.
Is there a difference between the Indonesian classical music and Australian classical music in terms of notes maybe? Or
in terms of style.
Maybe you can explain to us more about it?
A lot of Indonesian composers are influenced quite rightly by traditional Indonesian music. I mean, the obvious example is Ananda's Rhapsodia Nusantara. And I believe he's written 20 of them, or almost finished his 20th. And I think in all of them he uses a traditional
instrument.
No, traditional
just a
melody.
Piano. A melody,
traditional melodies from Java, from Aceh, he's used Papua melodies. And Trisuci Kamal has also written music based on Indonesian folk melodies, but even in her more Western style music, she incorporates Indonesian music, traditional Indonesian musical language. So she's a very, very interesting.
But Indonesia is a very cultural country as compared to maybe Australia, or there are more variety of different cultures and races here as well. Now, but over Australia, do you see that sort of like what's the essence in the music? Like in Indonesia, we have like you mentioned, they put in a lot of Javanese style. What about in Australia?
That's very, very interesting. Nowadays, Western composers in Australia are incorporating some Aboriginal music. For instance, they incorporate the didgeridoo in their works. That's a traditional Aboriginal instrument. But what's interesting in Australia also is that composers are being influenced, instead of being influenced by European music, which they were in previous generations, they're now influenced more by the music of their neighbouring countries. Many of them, like Ross Edwards and Peter Skultop, have been influenced by Indonesian music, but also by music from New Guinea and Japan, so countries in the Pacific Ocean region.
Have you ever visited Singapore?
I haven't been to Singapore.
All right, because we talk about Asian countries, right?
Yeah.
You know, you can't compare Indonesia and Australia, but you can compare Indonesia and the neighboring, like Singapore or Malaysia. Do you happen to know how the music scene is there?
I don't. I really don't know.
So that's the next stop that you must.
Maybe that's the next stop.
What is the biggest challenge when it comes to classical music?
Yeah. Oh, well, there are, I guess, two challenges. One is the sheer technical challenge of getting your fingers around the notes, but then you have to really develop your feeling for each style. So if you're playing Beethoven, that's very different from playing Chopin. And of course, if you're playing Indonesian music, I have to try and immerse myself in a completely different musical way of thinking. So that's very interesting. An example of that is that in a lot of Asian languages, in the Indonesian language, you accent the last note of the last syllable of a word. But in Western languages, you often that's the weakest syllable of the word, and that means in music it's very similar. So when you end a phrase in Western music, you end it softly, but often in Indonesian music, that's the wrong thing to do.
You have to end it in longer.
Yes.
Right.
Language and music are obviously very related, so you have to become very aware of that and very aware of the differences.
All right, Daniel, we're going to go for a short break, but after we come back, we're going to continue talking.
Right,
now, Daniel still has more to share about classical music in Indonesia after the break. Stay with us.